The gunshot that killed her husband still echoed in Nora Fletcher's mind 3 months later as she knelt beside the rain barrel behind the abandoned shed, cupping water into her trembling hands and drinking like it might be her last meal on earth. She had been beautiful once, back when Samuel was alive and their small ranch outside Denver had promised them everything. That was before the drought, before the debts, before the three men rode up demanding payment Samuel could not give. The bullet had taken him in the chest on a Tuesday afternoon while Nora watched from the kitchen window, a scream dying in her throat as her husband crumpled into the dust. The sheriff had shrugged when she reported it, said Samuel owed money to dangerous people, said maybe she should have convinced him to pay up. The ranch was seized 2 weeks later. Everything she owned fit into a single carpet bag. Now it was late September 1882, and Nora had made it as far as Park City, Utah, a mining town carved into the Wasatch Mountains where silver drew men like moths to flame. She had arrived with 17 cents in her pocket and the clothes on her back, both growing more threadbare by the day. The boarding houses wanted money she did not have. The saloons wanted things she would not give. So she had found this forgotten corner of town, a collapsed lean-to behind a shuttered mining office, and she made it home. Rain was her salvation and her torment. When it fell, she had water to drink. When it did not, she grew weaker. She ate what she could find: apple cores from behind the hotel, half a loaf of bread someone had thrown to the dogs, wild berries from the scrub brush on the mountainside. Her dresses hung loose on her frame. Her hands shook when she tried to sew, tried to offer mending services for pennies that never came. Park City was full of men who had come to get rich and women who had come to help them spend it. There was no place for a widow with nothing to sell but dignity she refused to surrender. The consumption had started a month ago, a cough that would not quit, a fever that came and went like an unwelcome visitor. She knew what it meant. Her mother had died the same way, drowning in her own lungs while Nora held her hand. She was living on borrowed time, and she knew it. Every morning she woke surprised to find herself still breathing. Every night she wondered if she would see another dawn. It was on one of those mornings when the September sun broke gold over the mountains and Nora was trying to wash her face with the last cupful of rainwater that she heard the horses. 3 of them coming down the narrow alley where her shelter hid behind broken crates and forgotten lumber. She froze, water dripping from her chin, her heart hammering against her ribs. Men on horses rarely meant anything good. "You sure this is the right way?" a voice called out, deep and unhurried. "Map says the assay office should be right through here," another voice answered, "though I'll be damned if I can see it through all this mess." Nora pressed herself against the wall of her shelter, trying to become invisible, trying not to cough. The horses came closer. She could hear the creak of leather, the jingle of spurs, the heavy breathing of the animals. Then one of them stopped, right at the mouth of her hiding place. "Hold up," the first voice said. Nora closed her eyes and prayed they would pass, prayed they would not see her, prayed for any mercy the universe still owed her. "Isaac, what are you stopping for? We got business to attend to." Thought I saw something. The rider dismounted. Nora heard boots on hard ground coming closer. She opened her eyes and found herself looking up at a man who towered over her even when she was standing, which she was not. He was in his middle 20s, maybe 26 or 27, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of a storm about to break. He wore a dusty brown coat over a work shirt, denim pants, and boots that had seen 1,000 miles of hard country. A gun belt sat easy on his hips, but his hands were not anywhere near it. He was just standing there, looking at her with an expression she could not read. "Madam," he said finally, his voice gentler than she expected. "You all right?" It was such a ridiculous question that Nora almost laughed. She was crouched in an alley behind a broken shed, living in a lean-to made of scrap wood, so thin her bones showed through her skin, and he wanted to know if she was all right. But when she opened her mouth to say something sharp, what came out instead was a cough that doubled her over, racking her body until she tasted copper on her tongue. The man moved fast. He was beside her in an instant, one hand on her shoulder, steadying her while she struggled to breathe. When the coughing finally stopped, she found herself leaning against him, too weak to pull away, too tired to care. Isaac, what in the hell are you doing? The other rider had come up behind them. He was older, 40 maybe, with a weathered face and suspicious eyes. We don't have time for strays. She's sick, Callahan, Isaac said. His hand was still on Nora's shoulder, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. She needs help. She needs a doctor, which we are not, and a charity house, which we also are not. Come on. But Isaac did not move. He was looking at Nora with those storm-colored eyes, and she found she could not look away. There was something in his gaze that she had not seen in a long time, something that looked almost like concern, like she mattered, like she was more than a ghost haunting an alley. When did you last eat? He asked her. I eat, Nora said, and hated how defensive she sounded. I'm fine. You're not fine. He said it matter-of-factly, without judgment. You're starving, and you're sick, and you're living in a pile of wood scraps. He turned to the other man. Callahan, go on to the assay office without me. I'll catch up. Callahan made a disgusted noise. Your brother is going to have your hide for this. Let him try. It's your funeral. Callahan wheeled his horse around and rode off, leaving them alone in the alley. Isaac turned back to Nora. Can you stand? I don't need your help. But even as she said it, she was swaying, her vision darkening at the edges. Pride's a fine thing, Isaac said, but it won't keep you alive. He held out his hand. My name's Isaac Donovan. I'm not going to hurt you. Nora looked at his hand for a long moment. She thought about Samuel, about the life she had lost, about the fact that accepting help from a stranger was one more surrender in a long line of defeats. But she was so tired, so desperately tired, and his eyes were kind. She took his hand. He pulled her up with surprising gentleness, and when her legs buckled under her, he caught her before she fell. Easy, he said. I've got you. I don't know you, Nora whispered. No, Isaac agreed. But you will. He led her to his horse, a big chestnut gelding with patient eyes, and lifted her into the saddle like she weighed nothing at all. She wanted to protest, wanted to climb down and walk away with whatever scraps of dignity she had left, but her body would not cooperate. She could only sit there clinging to the saddle horn while Isaac swung up behind her. Where are we going? She managed to ask. Somewhere you can get a hot meal and a clean bed, he said. And then we're going to figure out what comes next. I can't pay you. Didn't ask you to. He guided the horse out of the alley and onto Main Street, where the morning crowds were beginning to gather. Nora felt every eye on her, felt the weight of judgment from the respectable women in their clean dresses, and the knowing looks from the men outside the saloons. She wanted to disappear, wanted to melt into nothing rather than be seen like this, broken and desperate in the arms of a stranger. But Isaac seemed not to notice or care. He rode straight to the Silver Creek Hotel, the nicest establishment in Park City, and dismounted in front of it like he owned the place. He reached up for Nora, and when she hesitated, he simply lifted her down and carried her through the front door. The lobby was all polished wood and brass fixtures, cleaner and finer than anything Nora had seen in months. The clerk behind the desk, a thin man with spectacles and a pinched expression, looked up at their entrance, and his face went through several complicated expressions in rapid succession. Mr. Donovan, he said carefully, how can I help you today? I need a room, Martin, your best one. And send for Doc Brennan. This lady needs attention. Martin's eyes flicked to Nora, taking in her ragged dress and hollow cheeks, and something dismissive crossed his face. Sir, perhaps a different establishment would be more appropriate for your companion. We have standards to maintain. Isaac's expression did not change, but something in the air grew colder. I said I need a room, Martin. I didn't ask for your opinion on my companions. Of course, sir. But the other guests might be uncomfortable with someone of her obvious circumstances staying here. Perhaps the boarding house on 3rd Street would be a better fit. How much? Isaac said quietly. I'm sorry? How much would it take for you to stop talking and get me the key to your best room? Martin swallowed. Mr. Donovan, I didn't mean to imply anything offensive. It's just that Mrs. Sterling, who runs the establishment, has certain expectations about the caliber of our clientele. Isaac shifted Nora in his arms and reached into his coat pocket with his free hand. He pulled out a leather wallet and extracted several bills, laying them on the counter with deliberate precision. That's a week's rent in advance, plus extra for your trouble and your discretion. Now get me the key, or I'll take my money and my business to the Grand Hotel and let everyone in town know why. The money disappeared from the counter so fast Nora almost missed it. Martin produced a key with a brass tag marked with the number 7. Room 7 is our finest, sir. Top of the stairs, end of the hall. I'll send for the doctor immediately. And a bath, Isaac added. Hot water, soap, clean towels, and food. Whatever the kitchen has ready. Of course, sir. Right away. Isaac carried Nora up the stairs, her face burning with humiliation at being hauled around like a child, at being the object of Martin's disdain, at owing this man debts she could never repay. But she was also aware of the strength in his arms, the steady beat of his heart against her side, the fact that he had just spent what must have been a significant amount of money on a stranger he found in an alley. Room 7 was as fine as Martin had promised, with a real bed covered in a quilt, a chest of drawers, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and actual curtains on the window. Isaac set Nora down on the bed with surprising care, and she sank into the mattress with a small sound of relief. She had not slept on anything but hard ground in 3 months. She had forgotten what soft felt like. The doctor will be here soon, Isaac said, standing back and looking at her with that same unreadable expression. You'll eat something and get cleaned up and rest. And then we'll talk. Why are you doing this? Nora asked. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Isaac was quiet for a moment, looking at her, and then out the window at the mountains rising beyond the town. My sister died 2 years ago, he said finally. Consumption took her. By the time we realized how bad it was, there was nothing to be done. She was 17 years old, and she died scared and in pain, and I couldn't do a damned thing to help her. He turned back to Nora. I saw you coughing in that alley, and I thought, not this time. Not if I can help it. Nora's throat tightened. I'm sorry about your sister. Me too. He moved toward the door. I'll be back in a few hours. Let the doctor examine you. Eat the food. Try to rest. We'll figure out the rest later. I still can't pay you back. Then don't, Isaac said simply, and left before she could argue. Nora sat alone in the hotel room, surrounded by more comfort than she had known in months, and started to cry. Not sad tears exactly, and not happy ones either. Something more complicated, relief and fear and gratitude and suspicion all tangled together until she could not tell them apart. She cried until the coughing started again, and then she lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling and wondered what she had just gotten herself into. The doctor arrived 20 minutes later, a gray-haired man with kind eyes and steady hands. He examined her thoroughly, listened to her lungs, asked questions about her symptoms, and finally sat back with a sigh that told her everything she needed to know. It's consumption, she said before he could. I know. It's early yet, Doc Brennan said. You've got a chance if you take care of yourself. Good food, clean air, rest. The mountain climate here is actually beneficial. I've seen people recover. I've seen people die, Nora said. That too, he admitted. But the ones who die are usually the ones who don't have the resources to fight it. You're thin as a rail and exhausted. That's not helping. But if you can build your strength back up, you've got a fighting chance. After he left, hotel staff brought up a copper bathtub and bucket after bucket of hot water, more water than Nora had seen in one place in months. They brought soap that smelled like lavender and towels so clean they hurt to look at. When they left, Nora stripped off her filthy dress and sank into the bath with a moan that was almost indecent. The water turned gray within minutes. She scrubbed her skin until it hurt, washed her hair 3 times, and stayed in the tub until the water went cold. When she finally climbed out, she felt almost human again. There was a cotton nightgown laid out on the bed, simple but clean, and she put it on gratefully. The food came next. Roast chicken, potatoes with butter, fresh bread, green beans, and a slice of apple pie that made her want to weep. She tried to eat slowly, tried not to make herself sick, but it had been so long since she had real food that she could barely control herself. She ate until her stomach hurt, and then she crawled under the quilt and fell asleep before she could think better of it. She dreamed of Samuel, of the ranch, of the moment the bullet struck and everything changed. But for the first time in months, the dream did not end in darkness. This time there was a voice calling her name, pulling her back toward light, and when she turned toward it, she saw storm-colored eyes and a hand reaching out to catch her before she fell. When she woke, the sun was low in the sky, and Isaac Donovan was sitting in a chair by the window, watching her with that same patient, unreadable expression. "How long have you been there?" she asked, her voice rough from sleep. "About an hour," he said. "You were sleeping so hard I thought maybe you'd died, but then you started snoring." "I don't snore." "You definitely snore." There was the barest hint of amusement in his voice. "How do you feel?" Nora considered the question. Her body still ached, her chest still felt tight, but she was clean and fed and rested, and that was more than she had been this morning. "Better," she admitted. Thank you. Doc says you'll need to take it easy for a while. Build your strength back up." He gave me some medicine for the cough. Isaac pulled a brown bottle from his coat pocket and set it on the bedside table. "Tastes like hell, but it should help." "I can't stay here," Nora said. "This room must cost a fortune, and I have nowhere to go after." "We'll figure it out." Isaac leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Tell me your story. Who are you and how did you end up in that alley?" So she told him about Samuel, about the ranch, about the drought and the debts and the men who came to collect, about the gunshot and the sheriff's indifference, and the slow slide from respectable widow to desperate vagrant, about the consumption and the rain barrel and the growing certainty that she would not survive another month. She told him everything, because what did she have left to lose? And Isaac listened without interrupting, his face grave, his eyes never leaving hers. "Those men who killed your husband," he said when she finished. "You know their names? What does it matter? They're long gone by now." "Maybe, maybe not. Justice has a funny way of catching up to people." "There's no justice for people like me," Nora said bitterly. "I learned that the hard way." Isaac was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening street below. "I came to Park City 6 months ago with my brother Nathan and our business partner Callahan. We've got a silver claim up in the mountains, nothing fancy yet but promising. Nathan's the brains of the operation, always was. He can look at a rock face and tell you what's inside it. Callahan knows mining inside and out, and me, I'm just the muscle. I keep things running, handle the business side when Nathan's got his head in the geology." "Why are you telling me this?" Nora asked. "Because I'm about to make you a proposal, and I want you to understand where I'm coming from first." He turned back to face her. "I need help. The claim is doing well enough that we've hired on some workers, and we're setting up a proper camp up there. But it's all men, rough men, and the cooking is terrible, and the camp is a mess, and nobody's got clean clothes. We need someone to handle the domestic side of things. Cooking, cleaning, mending, organizing supplies. That sort of thing." Nora stared at him. "You want to hire me?" "I want to offer you a job," Isaac corrected. "Room and board at the camp, plus wages. Not much at first, but enough to save some if you're careful. Clean air, good food, honest work. Doctor says that's what you need to beat the consumption, and it gives you time to figure out what comes next. I don't know anything about mining camps. You don't need to. You just need to know how to cook and clean, which I'm assuming you do. The rest you'll figure out. It was too good. Too easy. There had to be a catch. What do you want from me? Nora asked suspiciously. Really want, I mean. Isaac's face went hard. I want you to have a chance to live, that's all. I saw my sister die because we didn't get her help in time, and I'll be damned if I watch someone else go the same way when I could have done something about it. His voice softened. I'm not asking for anything except honest work for honest pay. You'll have your own space at the camp, your own privacy. I won't touch you, won't ask you for anything you don't want to give. You have my word on that. Nora looked at him. This stranger who had pulled her out of an alley and given her food and shelter, and now was offering her something that looked almost like a future. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. But trust was a luxury she had learned she could not afford. I need to think about it, she said. Take your time. You're paid up here for a week. Rest, get your strength back, and we'll talk again. He headed for the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. What's your name? I just realized I never asked. Nora Fletcher. Well, Nora Fletcher, I hope you say yes. I think you'd do just fine up at the claim. And then he was gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her fears and the first real hope she had felt in months. She spent the next 3 days in the hotel room, sleeping and eating and slowly remembering what it felt like to be human. The cough did not go away, but the medicine helped, and the rest helped more. By the 4th day, she was strong enough to sit by the window and watch the street below, the endless parade of miners and merchants and hopeful fools chasing silver dreams into the mountains. Isaac came to visit every afternoon. He never stayed long, just checked to make sure she was all right and had everything she needed. Sometimes he brought small things, a book he thought she might like, a bag of peppermints from the general store, a newspaper from Salt Lake City. He never pressed her about the job offer, never made her feel like she owed him anything. He was just there, solid and steady, like a rock in a river that would not be moved. On the 5th day, she made her decision. I'll do it, she told him when he came to visit. I'll take the job. Something in Isaac's face relaxed, tension she had not realized he was carrying. Good, he said. That's real good. We'll head up to the camp tomorrow if you're feeling strong enough. It's about 2 hours on horseback. I can manage. I know you can. He smiled then, the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his entire face. He was handsome when he was serious, but when he smiled, he was something else entirely. They left at dawn the next morning. Isaac had bought her new clothes, a simple dress, and sturdy boots, and a warm coat against the mountain cold. She had protested the expense, but he waved her off with the same patience he showed for everything. Consider it an advance on wages, he said, and that was the end of the discussion. The ride up into the mountains was beautiful in a way that hurt. The aspens were turning gold, their leaves shimmering in the morning light. The air was thin and cold and so clean it made her chest ache. They followed a narrow trail that wound up through pine forests and across rushing streams, climbing higher and higher until Park City was just a smudge in the valley below. The claim's called the Silver Rose, Isaac told her as they rode. Nathan named it after our mother. She died when we were young, and he always said she would have loved these mountains. Is Nathan like you? Nora asked. Not even a little bit, Isaac said with a laugh. He's quieter, more serious, thinks everything through 10 times before he makes a move. Whereas I just dive in and hope for the best. Is that what you did with me? Dove in and hoped for the best? Isaac glanced at her, his expression turning thoughtful. Maybe, but some things are worth the risk. The mining camp appeared around a bend in the trail, a collection of tents and rough wooden buildings clustered around the mouth of a tunnel that led into the mountainside. There were men working everywhere, hauling rocks, operating a sluice, repairing equipment. They looked up as Isaac and Nora rode in, their faces ranging from curious to skeptical to openly hostile. Boys, this is Nora Fletcher, Isaac called out as he dismounted. She's going to be handling the cooking and camp management from now on. I expect you to treat her with respect, same as you'd treat any other member of this operation. Anyone who doesn't can collect their pay and head back to town. We clear? There was some muttering, but most of the men nodded. One of them, a tall man with Nathan's same dark hair and a face that shared Isaac's strong bones, came forward. He looked Nora up and down with cool, assessing eyes. "You're the woman Isaac found in town," he said. It was not quite a question. "I am," Nora said, lifting her chin. She would not be ashamed. "Can you cook?" "Yes." "Can you handle living in a camp full of rough men who haven't seen civilization in months?" "I've survived worse." Nathan studied her a moment longer, then nodded. "Welcome to the Silver Rose, Miss Fletcher. I'm Nathan Donovan. My brother's judgment is occasionally questionable, but his heart's usually in the right place. I hope you prove him right." "So do I," Nora said honestly. Her quarters were a small cabin, set slightly apart from the main camp, with a real bed and a stove and even a few books on a shelf. It was simple but sturdy, and it was hers. After months of sleeping in the open, it felt like a palace. The work was hard but satisfying. She woke before dawn to get the breakfast fire going, cooked enormous quantities of food for hungry men, spent her days managing supplies and mending clothes and keeping the camp in some semblance of order. The men were rough around the edges, but mostly respectful, especially after Isaac made an example of one miner who made a crude comment. The man's nose healed eventually, but the message was clear. Nora was under Isaac's protection, and anyone who forgot that would regret it. The mountain air and good food did their work. Within a month, Nora had gained back some of the weight she had lost. Her cough improved, though it never fully went away. Doc Brennan rode up from town once a week to check on her, and each time he seemed cautiously optimistic. "Keep doing what you're doing," he told her. "You're fighting it off." But it was not just her body that was healing. It was something deeper, some part of her that had broken when Samuel died, and she lost everything. The work gave her purpose, the mountains gave her peace, and Isaac gave her something she could not quite name, some combination of safety and hope and the growing certainty that she was not alone. He was always there, solid and steady, making her laugh with dry observations about the other miners, bringing her wildflowers he found on the mountain trails, sitting with her in the evenings when the work was done and the stars came out overhead. They talked about everything and nothing, her past and his, dreams they had given up and dreams they had not yet dared to name. He never pushed, never asked for more than she was willing to give, but his presence was a constant comfort. "Why are you so kind to me?" she asked him one night in late October. They were sitting on the steps of her cabin, watching the first snow of the season drift down through the pines. Isaac was quiet for a long time. "My father was a hard man," he said finally. "Believed in strength above all else. When our mother died, he told Nathan and me that weakness was the worst sin a man could commit, and asking for help was the same as admitting defeat. Nathan learned to keep everything inside, became the stoic one. But I saw what that did to him, how it ate at him. And I saw what it did to my sister when she got sick. She wouldn't tell us how bad it was because she didn't want to be weak. By the time we found out, it was too late." He turned to look at Nora, his eyes reflecting the lamplight from inside the cabin. "I don't want to be the kind of man my father was. I want to be the kind of man who helps when he can, who doesn't turn away from suffering just because it's inconvenient. And when I saw you in that alley, I saw someone who needed help but was too proud to ask for it. I recognized that. And I couldn't walk away." Nora felt something shift in her chest, some wall she had built around her heart beginning to crack. "You're a good man, Isaac Donovan. I'm trying to be." He reached out and brushed a snowflake from her hair, his touch so gentle it made her breath catch. "You make it easier." She should have pulled away, should have reminded herself that she was a widow, that it had only been 6 months since Samuel died, that she had no business feeling what she was feeling for this man who had saved her life. But she did not pull away. She stayed right where she was, close enough to feel the warmth of him, close enough to see the way his eyes darkened as he looked at her. Nora, he said softly, and her name on his lips was the sweetest sound she had ever heard. Don't, she whispered, though she was not sure what she was asking him not to do. Don't look at her like that. Don't make her feel things she had no right to feel. Don't break her heart when she had barely survived losing the first one. Don't what? Isaac asked, his voice rough. Don't make me hope for things I can't have. What if you can have them? He cupped her face in his hand, his palm rough with calluses, but infinitely gentle. What if I'm standing right here wanting the same things you want? You don't know what I want. Then tell me. She could not say it, could not put into words the longing that had been growing in her for weeks, the way her heart jumped every time she saw him, the way she had started watching for him like he was the sun and she was a flower turning toward light. But she could show him. She leaned forward and kissed him. For a heartbeat, Isaac went absolutely still, and Nora thought she had made a terrible mistake. But then his arms came around her, and he was kissing her back with a fierce tenderness that stole her breath. His hand slid into her hair. Her fingers gripped his coat, and for a perfect, impossible moment, nothing else existed but the two of them, and the snow falling around them, and the feeling of coming home to a place she had never been. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Isaac rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, he admitted. Why didn't you? Didn't want to rush you. Didn't want you to think I'd only helped you because I wanted something from you. And now? Now I'm hoping you know that I'd do anything for you, whether you wanted me or not. But I'm also hoping you want me. He opened his eyes and looked at her with such raw honesty it made her heart ache. Do you, Nora, want me? She thought about Samuel, about the guilt she had been carrying, about whether it was too soon, or wrong, or disloyal to move on. But then she thought about the fact that she had nearly died in an alley, that life was short and brutal and precious, that Samuel would not have wanted her to spend the rest of her days grieving. And she thought about Isaac, about his kindness and his strength and the way he made her feel like she was worth saving. Yes, she said, I want you. His smile was like sunrise. Good. That's real good. They took it slow after that, courting in the old-fashioned way, despite the unconventional circumstances. Isaac would walk her through the aspens on her afternoons off, holding her hand like she was something precious. He carved her a wooden comb with flowers etched into it, spent weeks getting it perfect. She made him a new shirt, stitching it by lamplight until her eyes hurt, wanting it to be just right. They stole kisses in quiet moments, but Isaac never pushed for more, never assumed anything. He treated her like a lady, even though she was just a camp cook living in the mountains. November came, bringing cold that bit deep and snow that piled high. The mining work slowed, but did not stop. The men grew restless, trapped by weather, and Nora found herself mediating disputes and keeping spirits up with extra coffee and stories around the fire. She had become the heart of the camp without quite realizing it, the person everyone turned to when things got hard. Nathan cornered her one afternoon while she was taking inventory of their dwindling supplies. You're good for him, he said without preamble. Nora looked up from her ledger, startled. Nathan rarely spoke to her beyond necessities. I'm sorry? Isaac, you're good for him. I've never seen him like this, settled and happy. He's always been the restless one, the one who couldn't stay put. But now he's got a reason to build something instead of just searching. He saved my life, Nora said. I owe him everything. That's not why he did it, and it's not why he's with you now. Nathan's face was serious. My brother's a good man, Miss Fletcher, but he's been hurt before. Woman in Denver. few years back. She told him she loved him, then married someone richer the moment a better offer came along. It's made him careful with his heart. The fact that he's given it to you means something. I won't hurt him, Nora promised. See that you don't. But Nathan's voice was not unkind. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. The camp's better for it, and so is he. December brought blizzards that shut down the mine completely. The men were trapped in camp, growing more bored and irritable by the day. Nora organized card games and storytelling nights, rationed their supplies carefully, and somehow kept everyone from killing each other. Isaac watched her handle the chaos with something like awe. You should see yourself, he told her one night. They were in her cabin, sitting close to the stove while the wind howled outside. The way you handle all this. You're stronger than you think you are. I'm just doing what needs doing, Nora said. That's what strength is. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Nora, I need to tell you something. Something in his voice made her nervous. What is it? I love you. He said it simply, directly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I think I've loved you since that first day in the alley, when you looked up at me like you were daring me to hurt you so you could prove you could take it. You're the bravest person I've ever met and the kindest, and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Nora's eyes filled with tears. Isaac, You don't have to say it back, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. I'm not expecting anything. I just wanted to be honest. I love you too, Nora said, and realized as she said it that it was true. Somewhere between the alley and the hotel room and the mountain camp, she had fallen completely in love with this man who had given her back her life. I didn't think I could feel this way again after Samuel. I thought that part of me died with him. But you made me want to live again, Isaac. You gave me a future when I thought I only had borrowed time. He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promise. And when he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes too. Marry me, he said. Nora laughed and cried at the same time. That's not a question. I'm not asking, Isaac said with a grin. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to marry me and we're going to build a life together. And I'm going to spend every day making sure you never regret saying yes to a crazy cowboy who found you in an alley. I'm still sick, Nora reminded him. The consumption could come back. I might not have as much time as you're hoping for. Then we'll make the most of whatever time we get. But for what it's worth, I think you're going to be around to annoy me for a very long time. He squeezed her hand. So what do you say, Nora Fletcher? Will you marry me? She thought about all the reasons she should say no. She was a widow. She was sick. She had nothing to bring to a marriage except debt and bad luck and a cough that would not quit. But she also thought about the fact that Isaac knew all of that and wanted her anyway, that he looked at her like she was something precious, that he had given her hope when she had none left. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. The wedding took place in Park City on a cold January morning in 1883. Doc Brennan gave Nora away, Nathan stood up as best man, and Callahan grumbled the whole time, but showed up in a clean shirt, which was his way of showing he approved. The ceremony was simple, held in a small church with wooden pews and stained glass windows that cast colored light across the floor. Nora wore a dress Isaac had bought for her, dark blue wool with ivory lace at the collar. It was the finest thing she had ever owned. Isaac wore his one good suit, looking uncomfortable but determined. When the preacher asked if he took this woman to be his lawfully wedded wife, Isaac's "I do" rang out clear and strong, and Nora felt her heart overflow. They spent their wedding night at the Silver Creek Hotel, in the same room where Isaac had first brought her all those months ago. It felt like coming full circle, like closing one chapter and opening another. Isaac was gentle and patient, treating her like spun glass, and Nora loved him even more for it. They loved each other through the night, bodies and hearts entwined, and when dawn came, they were truly married in every sense of the word. I'm the luckiest man alive, Isaac murmured against her hair as they lay tangled together, watching the sun rise over the mountains through the window. I'm the one who's lucky, Nora said. 6 months ago, I was dying in an alley. Now I'm Mrs. Isaac Donovan, with a husband who loves me and a future that actually looks bright. We're both lucky then. He kissed her temple. What do you want to do today, Mrs. Donovan? Go home, she said. Back to the mountains. Back to our life. So they did. They rode back up to the Silver Rose as husband and wife, and if the miners noticed a certain glow about both of them, they were wise enough not to comment. Nora moved her things into Isaac's cabin, which was larger than hers and had a better view of the valley. They made it theirs together, hanging curtains and building shelves and turning it from a bachelor's quarters into a home. Spring came, and with it, hope. The mine was producing well, silver ore in quantities that made even Nathan smile. They hired more men, expanded the operation, built more permanent structures. The mining camp was becoming something more substantial, a real settlement in the mountains. Isaac and Nathan talked about building a stamp mill, about getting serious investors, about turning the Silver Rose into something that would last. And Nora continued to heal. The cough faded to an occasional nuisance. She gained weight and color, her body growing strong from mountain air and good food, and the knowledge that she was loved. Doc Brennan pronounced her on the mend, said that if she kept taking care of herself, she had every chance of living a full life. You beat it, Isaac said when she told him the news. They were sitting on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset over the valley. You beat the consumption. We beat it, Nora corrected. I wouldn't be here without you. Maybe, but you did the hard part. You fought for your life when it would have been easier to give up. She leaned against him, feeling his arm come around her, solid and warm. I had something to fight for. You gave me that. Summer brought new challenges and new joys. A group of claim jumpers tried to muscle in on the Silver Rose, claiming Nathan and Isaac's paperwork was faulty. It turned ugly, with threats and violence narrowly avoided. In the end, the law sided with the Donovan brothers, but the experience left everyone shaken. They hired guards, improved security, and Isaac started carrying his gun all the time, something Nora hated but understood. I won't lose this, he told her fiercely one night after another confrontation with the jumpers had nearly turned into a gunfight. I won't lose what we've built. I won't lose you. You won't lose me, Nora promised. We've come too far for that. In August, Nora realized her courses were late. At first, she thought it was stress or the lingering effects of her illness. But when another month passed and morning sickness started, she knew. She was pregnant. She told Isaac on a Saturday evening, unable to keep the secret any longer. They were having dinner in their cabin, just the two of them, and the words tumbled out in a rush. Isaac, I'm expecting. We're going to have a baby. He dropped his fork, stared at her, and then his face split into the biggest smile she had ever seen. Are you sure? As sure as I can be. Doc Brennan confirmed it this morning. Isaac was around the table in an instant, pulling her up into his arms and spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. We're having a baby, he kept saying, like he could not quite believe it. We're going to be parents. Are you happy? Nora asked, suddenly nervous. They had never talked about children, never planned this. Happy? Isaac cupped her face in his hands. Nora, I'm over the moon. Terrified, but over the moon. We're going to have a family. The pregnancy was not easy. Morning sickness plagued her for months. The mountain air that had helped her heal now seemed too thin, leaving her breathless and dizzy. Doc Brennan wanted her to move down to Park City for the duration, somewhere with easier access to medical care, but Nora refused. This was her home. Isaac was here. She would not leave. Isaac fussed over her like a mother hen, driving her crazy with his concern. He would not let her lift anything heavy, insisted she rest constantly, and got into an argument with Callahan about the smoke from the smelter affecting the baby. Nathan, meanwhile, started building a cradle in his spare time, his hands surprisingly deft with the wood. "I can't believe my brother's going to be a father," he said to Nora one afternoon, sanding the cradle's rockers smooth. "He used to be the most irresponsible person I knew." "People change," Nora said, her hand on her growing belly. "They do," Nathan agreed. "You changed him, Miss Nora, made him want to be better." "He was always good," Nora said. "He just needed a reason to believe it." Winter came again, her second at the Silver Rose. The baby was due in March, and Nora grew enormous and uncomfortable and short-tempered. Isaac bore her mood swings with patience that amazed her, never complaining when she snapped at him, always ready with a foot rub or a cup of tea or just a quiet presence when she needed it. "I don't deserve you," she told him one night in February, feeling weepy and hormonal and overwhelmed. "Yes, you do," Isaac said firmly. "You deserve everything good in this world, and I'm going to spend my life making sure you get it." The baby came early, on a snowy morning in late February, 1884. Nora's water broke while she was making breakfast, and Isaac nearly passed out from panic. He got her back to the cabin, sent someone racing down to Park City for Doc Brennan, and then proceeded to drive Nora insane with his hovering. "If you ask me one more time if I'm all right, I swear I will shoot you," she snarled during a contraction. "Yes, madam," Isaac said, looking terrified. Doc Brennan arrived in time, and the birth was hard, but not as terrible as Nora had feared. She labored through the afternoon and into the evening, with Isaac holding her hand and talking to her, keeping her focused. And when the baby finally came, sliding into the world with a lusty cry, Nora felt something in her chest explode, with feeling so intense it was almost pain. "It's a boy," Doc Brennan announced, placing the squalling infant on Nora's chest. "A healthy boy." Nora looked down at her son, at his red face and furious expression and tiny, perfect fingers, and started to cry. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Hello, my love." Isaac was crying too, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his wife and child. "He's perfect," he said, his voice breaking. "Nora, he's perfect." They named him Samuel Isaac Donovan, after both the fathers who had shaped their lives. Samuel for the man Nora had loved and lost, so that his memory would live on, and Isaac for the man who had saved her and given her a reason to keep fighting. Little Samuel was a fussy baby, colicky and demanding, but Nora had never been happier. She spent hours just watching him sleep, marveling at the fact that she had created this life, that she had gone from dying in an alley to holding her son in her arms. Isaac was a devoted father, walking the floor with Samuel when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, singing lullabies in a surprisingly good voice. "This is what I saved you for," he told Nora one night, holding Samuel while Nora rested. "So you could have this, so you could be a mother, so we could be a family. You gave me everything," Nora said, her heart so full it hurt. "A home, a future, a family. You gave me my life back." "No," Isaac said gently. "You took your life back. You fought for it. I just gave you a place to fight from." The mine continued to prosper. The Silver Rose became one of the most productive claims in Park City, and the Donovan brothers found themselves wealthy men. They could have sold out, moved to a city, lived in luxury. But Isaac and Nora chose to stay in the mountains, in the place that had become home. They built a real house, solid and beautiful, with glass windows and a stone fireplace and enough rooms for the family they hoped to have. Nathan built his own place nearby, and the mining camp grew into a small community, with families moving up to join the operation. Nora became the unofficial mayor, settling disputes and organizing social events and making sure everyone had what they needed. Life was good. Life was better than Nora had ever imagined it could be. Sometimes she would stand on her porch, watching Isaac play with Samuel in the yard, and think about that morning in the alley when she had been waiting to die. It felt like another lifetime, like it had happened to someone else entirely. When Samuel was 2, they had another child, a daughter they named Rose Evelyn. She was easier than Samuel had been, a calm baby with Isaac's eyes and Nora's smile. Samuel adored his little sister, always wanting to help take care of her, and Isaac was utterly besotted. "I'm outnumbered now," he would say, holding Rose while Samuel demanded a story. "Three against one. How is that fair?" "You wouldn't have it any other way," Nora would respond, and he would grin and admit she was right. The years passed in a blur of happiness. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic boy who wanted to know everything about the mine and the mountains. Rose was quieter, more thoughtful, preferring books and drawing to rough play. They had a third child when Rose was 4, another boy they named Thomas Nathan, after Isaac's brother who had become Uncle Nathan to all the children and who had finally found his own happiness with a schoolteacher from Park City. Nora's health remained good. The consumption never returned, driven away by clean living and love and the stubborn refusal to give up. She grew older and fuller, no longer the hollow wraith Isaac had found in the alley, but a woman in her prime, strong and capable, and loved beyond measure. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took her back to Park City, to the Silver Creek Hotel where they had spent their wedding night. They left the children with Nathan and his wife and had a night to themselves, something rare and precious. "Do you remember?" Isaac asked as they walked into the lobby, past Martin the clerk, who was now always excessively polite to them both. "I remember everything," Nora said. "I remember you carrying me through that door like I weighed nothing. I remember thinking you were either going to save me or ruin me, and I didn't care which. I hope I saved you." "You did more than that." She turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. "You gave me a life I never dreamed was possible. 3 beautiful children, a home I love, work that matters. And you, every single day, loving me like I'm something precious." "You are precious," Isaac said. "You're everything." They went up to room 7, the same room where he had first brought her all those years ago. It looked exactly the same, preserved in time, and Nora felt a rush of emotion so strong it made her dizzy. "I was so scared that day," she admitted. "Scared to trust you. Scared to hope. Scared that I would die before I got a chance to really live." "But you didn't die," Isaac said, pulling her close. "You lived. And you're going to keep living for a long, long time, Mrs. Donovan. I'll make sure of it." "I don't need you to make sure of it anymore," Nora said, smiling up at him. "I'm not living on borrowed time and rainwater anymore. I'm living my own life on my own terms with the man I love. That's more than enough." He kissed her then, and it was like their first kiss, and their wedding kiss, and every kiss in between, all rolled into one perfect moment. And when they made love that night, it was with the passion of new lovers and the comfort of old partners, and Nora thought that this, right here, was what happiness felt like. The years continued to roll past. Samuel grew into a young man, tall and strong like his father, with ambitions to expand the mining operation into new territories. Rose became a gifted artist, her drawings of mountain landscapes sought after by collectors in Salt Lake City and beyond. Thomas was still young, but already showing signs of Nathan's analytical mind, always asking questions about geology and minerals. Nora and Isaac grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They had their disagreements, of course, their moments of frustration and anger and hurt feelings, but they always came back to each other, always remembered what they had survived to build this life together. On a summer evening when Nora was in her mid-40s and Isaac was pushing 50, they sat on the porch of their home watching the sun set over the valley where Park City sprawled below. Their children were grown, or nearly so, building lives of their own. The mine was stable and profitable, providing for not just their family but dozens of others. They had built something that would last. "Do you ever think about that day in the alley?" Isaac asked, his arm around Nora's shoulders. "Sometimes," Nora admitted. "Not as much as I used to. It feels far away now, like it happened to someone else." "In a way, it did," Isaac said. "You're not that woman anymore. You're so much more. We're both different than we were," Nora said. You saved me, but I think maybe I saved you too. Gave you a reason to stop searching and start building. You did, Isaac agreed. I was just drifting before I met you, looking for silver, looking for purpose, looking for something I couldn't name. And then I found you, and suddenly everything made sense. Nora leaned into him, feeling his warmth and strength, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I love you, Isaac Donovan. I'll love you until the day I die, and probably beyond that. Well then, I guess we'll love each other forever, Isaac said, pressing a kiss to her hair, because I'm not planning on letting you go anytime soon. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one over the mountains. And Nora thought about everything that had led to this moment, the loss and the grief and the desperate struggle to survive, the gunshot that killed Samuel, the rain barrel that kept her alive, the alley where she had waited to die, and the cowboy who had given her a future and fresh starts, who had loved her when she had nothing to offer but herself. She had been living on rainwater and borrowed time, but Isaac had given her so much more. He had given her hope. He had given her love. He had given her a life worth living and a family to fill it with joy. He had given her everything. And as she sat there in the gathering darkness, surrounded by the mountains she had come to love and held safe in the arms of the man who had saved her, Nora Fletcher, Donovan knew with absolute certainty that she was home, not just in this place, but in this life, with this man, in this moment. She was home, and she was happy, and she was loved. And that was more than enough. It was everything. Samuel, their eldest, married a girl from Park City the following spring, a sharp-minded woman named Catherine, who worked as a bookkeeper and won Nora's heart immediately. The wedding was a grand affair, with half of Park City in attendance, and Nora cried through the entire ceremony. Isaac held her hand and cried too, though he would deny it later. Rose announced her intention to study art in San Francisco, a decision that terrified Nora, but which Isaac supported wholeheartedly. Let her fly, he told his worried wife. We raised her strong enough to handle anything. She'll come back to us. And she did, returning after 2 years, with a portfolio full of stunning work and a quiet young man named James, who painted seascapes and looked at Rose like she hung the moon. They settled in Park City, where Rose opened a studio and taught art to the local children, passing on her gift to the next generation. Thomas followed Nathan into geology, studying the science of the earth with the same passion his uncle had shown. He eventually took over management of the Silver Rose, modernizing operations and improving safety conditions. Under his leadership, the mine thrived for another generation. Nora and Isaac became grandparents, then great-grandparents, their home always full of children and laughter and life. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies slowing down, but their love never diminishing. If anything, it grew stronger with time, tempered by years of partnership and mutual devotion. Isaac's back started bothering him in his 60s, a lifetime of hard work finally catching up. Nora's cough returned occasionally, a reminder of the consumption that had nearly claimed her, but it never became the monster it had been. They took care of each other, made accommodations for age and infirmity, and refused to let anything slow them down too much. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party at the Silver Creek Hotel. It seemed fitting, coming full circle to the place where their story had really begun. The whole town turned out, miners and merchants and families who had come to the mountains seeking fortune and found community instead. I want to make a toast, Samuel said, standing up with his glass raised. He was a man in his prime now, confident and capable, the spitting image of his father. To my parents, who taught us all what love really means. My father found my mother when she had nothing, when the world had beaten her down and left her to die. And instead of walking away, he gave her his hand and his heart and his whole life. He saved her, and in return, she gave him purpose and family and joy. They built something beautiful together, and we are all lucky to be part of it. There was not a dry eye in the room. Isaac stood and pulled Nora to her feet, kissing her soundly while everyone cheered. 30 years, he said when the noise died down. 30 years, and I still wake up every morning grateful that I found you in that alley. Best decision I ever made, stopping to help. Best thing that ever happened to me was you saying yes. Best thing that ever happened to me was you asking, Nora said, her voice wavering with emotion. You gave me a future when I thought I only had borrowed time. You gave me fresh starts when I thought my story was over. You gave me everything, Isaac Donovan, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. They danced that night, slowly and carefully, Isaac's arms around Nora, like she was still the fragile woman he had carried up these stairs 3 decades before. But she was not fragile anymore. She was strong. They both were. Strong enough to build a life from nothing. Strong enough to weather every storm. Strong enough to love each other through everything life threw at them. The years rolled on. Isaac's health began to fail in his early 70s, his heart growing weak. The doctor said it was just age, just the natural end of a long life well lived. Isaac took the news with his characteristic calm, refusing to be afraid of something as inevitable as death. I've had a good run, he told Nora one evening, as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset like they had done 10,000 times before. Better than I ever deserved, better than I ever imagined, and it's all because of you. Don't talk like that, Nora said, though she knew it was denial. She could see him fading, could feel him slipping away day by day. You're going to be fine, maybe, Isaac said. But if I'm not, I need you to know something. I need you to know that every single day with you was a gift. Every moment, every laugh, every tear, every fight, every makeup, all of it. You made my life worth living, Nora. And if I die tomorrow, I'll die the happiest man who ever lived. You're not dying tomorrow, Nora said fiercely, gripping his hand. We have more time. We have to have more time. But time, as she had learned so long ago, was not something anyone could control. Isaac passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 months later, with Nora beside him holding his hand. He was 73 years old, and he died as he had lived, with dignity and grace and love. Nora thought she would shatter when he was gone, thought the grief would destroy her the way Samuel's death nearly had all those years ago. But she had survived losing one husband, and she would survive losing another. Not because the pain was any less, it was actually worse, deeper, and more profound, but because Isaac had taught her how to be strong, how to keep fighting even when everything seemed lost, how to find reasons to live even in the darkest moments. She lived another 8 years without him, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them carrying pieces of Isaac forward into the future. She told them stories about their grandfather, about the cowboy who had found a dying woman in an alley and decided to save her, about the love they had built from nothing but hope and determination. And when Nora finally passed away at the age of 81, peacefully in her sleep with Rose holding one hand and Thomas holding the other, her last thought was of Isaac, of storm-colored eyes and gentle hands and a voice saying, "I've got you," of the moment her life had truly begun when a stranger had offered her his hand and pulled her back from the edge of nothing. They buried her beside Isaac in the cemetery, overlooking Park City, with the mountains rising behind them and the valley stretching out below. Their headstone was simple, just their names and dates, and a single line, together in life, together in eternity. But their real legacy was not in stone. It was in the thriving mining operation that employed hundreds of people, in the art studio Rose had built, where children learned to see beauty in the world, in Samuel's children and grandchildren, spreading out across the West, carrying the Donovan name forward, in the countless lives they had touched, the people they had helped, the community they had built. Isaac had saved Nora from an alley where she was living on rainwater and borrowed time, and together they had created a future that would last for generations. They had built a love story for the ages, proof that even in the hardest, most unforgiving landscape, hope could take root and grow into something beautiful. Their story became legend in Park City, passed down through the years, embellished and romanticized, but never losing its essential truth. The cowboy and the widow, the man who stopped when everyone else would have passed by, the woman who found the strength to fight when she had every reason to give up, the love that saved them both. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the silver they pulled from the mountains, or the money they made, or the success they achieved. What mattered was that they had loved each other truly and completely, through sickness and health, through poverty and prosperity, through every trial and triumph life threw at them. They had taken borrowed time and made it eternal. They had taken rainwater and turned it into a river that would flow forever. That was their story. That was their legacy. That was the future Isaac had given Nora, and the fresh starts they had given each other every single day they had together. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.